Hey everyone, this is Jared from Authentic Soundware, and I'm here with an in-depth walkthrough of our new library, Space Age Voices. This is going to be a very in-depth rundown of all the features, the settings, and the nuances, everything you've wanted to know about this library, and more. This is going to be kind of a video documentation, if you will. I made another video that is more of an introduction and an overview, so I would recommend starting with that one if you haven't seen it already, and then come back and watch this one if you still have any questions, or if you just like listening to me talk about Kontakt. As I mentioned, this is going to be like a video documentation for this library, so I'm going to put YouTube chapter markers so you can just hop around and find whatever you're looking for. So that being said, if you're ready, let's grab a strong cup of coffee and get started. So let's start with the basic user interface. Most of the patches will look like this, and the first thing to know about this library, and really Kontakt in general, is about this info pane down here. The info pane displays a short help text for whichever control the mouse is currently hovering over, which may be in the body of the instrument here, but it could also just be a Kontakt control. If you don't see the info pane in your version of Kontakt, it means you need to go up here and make sure that info is selected from the Kontakt header. So the most basic thing you're probably going to need to do is change articulations. These are the available articulations for this instrument. The active one has a triangle next to it. You can click on these with your mouse to select one, or you can use the keys down here, and you could record that into your DAW so that you could change articulations on the fly in your sequence. Okay, the next thing to know about is the microphones. There are 3 microphones. There's a close mic 1, close mic 2, and the room mic. Close mic 1 is a Neumann U67-2 microphone. It was recorded to tape. And close mic 2 is an RCA 77 ribbon microphone, which is a figure 8 pattern, also recorded to tape. And then this is a stereo room. To adjust the volume of any of the mics, you can just turn these knobs here. To make fine adjustments, hold down Shift on your keyboard while moving the knob. To return it to the default value, you can hold Command or on Mac or Control on PC and just click on the control, and it'll set it back to default. These buttons with the M are mute buttons. You'll get a little feedback here about that. An important thing to note is that they're not like audio mute buttons. If the microphone is muted, it means that when you play a key, no voice for that mic position will play. So it's reducing your CPU load because it's not playing any samples for muted microphone positions. So that's just something you might want to be aware of. Like I said, you'll see some feedback in this area of the instrument sometimes. In the overview video, I mentioned that the microphones sort of get progressively cleaner as you move from right to left. So I did essential noise reduction on the room microphone, but tried to leave it really quite natural. Then it's a little more cleaned up in the ribbon microphone, and then the tube mic is the cleanest of all. So if you're working on a project and you're feeling like you're hearing too much noise for some reason, the first thing to do would be to either turn the room mic volume down or maybe just mute it completely. If you go to this diamond shape down here, you're going to be able to access some additional settings and options for each instrument. And what you'll see here will be dependent upon which Kontakt patch you have loaded up, and I'm going to go over those all in a moment. Quick note about round robins. So when you're working in a DAW, whenever you stop the transport in your DAW, the round robin position for all the articulations will be set to 0. If you need to manually reset the round robin position for whatever reason, you can just play this key down here in your sequence and it'll set everything back to 0. I've included noise samples of a couple different types here. On G5, we have a looping 3-minute room tone sample, and then on A5, there's breath samples. So this is something that you might insert directly before a phrase to give the feeling of the singers all taking a breath right before they sing. And then the room tone, the idea there is that in the situation where you may want to have the vocals completely exposed with no other instruments, like no musical background at all, essentially this gives you a noise floor that you can supplement with the samples. I've had instances myself where I've been working with the library where, I really like the sound of the room mic, but I had to do something really exposed, like it was the only instrument playing. And then when samples with a room tone came to an end, you had a very unnatural audio effect of this room tone disappearing. And so what you could do in this case is just hold down this, it's like 3 minutes of room tone that's on a loop. You could just hold that down through the whole performance so that when your room mic samples end, the room tone doesn't go away. It'll stay there. You can adjust the volume of the room and the breath samples with this knob here. They also respond to velocity, so between the two you can adjust the volume of all the noise samples. Okay, now let's just talk about the effects. There's a knob here for the tape amount. This sets the amount of the tape effect. It adds drive, saturation, warmth, and high frequency roll-off. You turn it fully counterclockwise to bypass the effect, and that will also conserve some CPU resources. The echo knob adjusts the amount of the reverb return. You can turn it fully counterclockwise to bypass the effect and conserve some CPU resources. I've included a custom impulse response that I think is suited for these samples and the overall vibe we're going for, but of course, you can just turn this all the way off and apply whatever reverb you feel works best in your situation. Then there's the transparent limiter. This sets the threshold for the limiter. So the lower the threshold, the more limiting is going to be applied. You can turn it all the way clockwise to bypass the effect and, again, conserve some CPU. Okay, now I'd like to just talk about dynamics and envelope control. The dynamics and volume control and the attack and release times behave a bit differently depending on whether you're using one of the long patches, the shorts, or the extras. So let's talk about the longs first. For the longs, the mod wheel, CC1, controls the volume, the timbre, and also the release time. So if I play a note and move the mod wheel on my keyboard, you'll hear that difference. I can also adjust the volume with CC11, and it will not affect the timbre. It's really just an extra layer of overall volume control. For the longs, volume is not controlled by velocity. However, other things are. So if I play with a harder velocity, I'm going to get a shorter attack on the note. If I play with a very soft velocity, I'm going to get a longer attack on that note. This is true for all of the articulations, but if the legato articulation is active, of course, it only applies to the first note in a legato phrase, as every other note is going to be handled in a legato fashion. For the short patches, the mod wheel isn't used for the dynamics, it's just velocity. Zooh, zooh, zooh. But you still have CC11 available to shape the contour of the note. Zooh. For the extras, like the ch and the cha and the exclamations and the spoken, velocity is going to be your main volume control. You can also use CC11 for additional volume control. Okay, let's talk about the longs and the legato. The oo and the ah patches have a true legato articulation with two modes. If you play overlapping notes in a legato fashion within the range of an octave, up or down, you're going to trigger transition samples to play between the notes. The smooth mode has longer transitions and is best suited for slower passages or phrases with wider intervals where you really want an audible glide between the notes. So you can hear that swoop. Agile mode has shorter, less pronounced transitions, and it's best for faster passages. Now, the transition time in both modes is going to vary depending on the width of the interval. Even in Agile mode, if you play a wider interval, that transition is going to be a bit longer for an octave than it is for a semitone. Now, you may be wondering, how am I switching between smooth mode and Agile mode? By default, the velocity with which the target note in a legato phrase is played sets which legato mode is going to be used. So a lower velocity will select the smooth mode, and higher velocities will select the Agile mode. So if I play a soft velocity, I get that wider one. If I play a harder velocity, the default crossover point is at velocity 64, but it's possible to adjust where that crossover point is to suit your playing style and the velocity response of your MIDI controller. And you can do that using the legato velocity crossover. It's also possible to set the legato mode via a key switch instead of by velocity. So in this panel, you would just deselect this, and you'll notice that this gets disabled. And now the key switches down here set the mode. Okay, so you can manually set them and just however you last set it is what it will be until you change it. And then you can just go back if you need. There's also a dedicated knob to offset the volume of the legato transition samples. And it's right here. There's this knob in the settings panel. And the value displayed is a percentage of the offset range. So you can't completely mute the legato transitions. If that's what you want, just use the sustains. I'll just talk about the sustains. These are standard long notes that are looped for an extended duration. Then we have and these are polyphonic. You can play chords. Then there's the glides. And we have glide down. In all of my libraries, this one, the Commodore, like the lap steel and space age rhythm, where there's a pitch glide like this, the samples are mapped to the target note, not the starting note. If I'm on the glide up and I want the ending note to be a G, I play a G, not an F sharp. So that started on an F sharp and swooped up to the G. And if I play the downs and I play a G, it's going to start on an A flat and glide down. And then we have the falls. Also polyphonic. That's great for endings. It wouldn't be Authentic Sounder without some fall release keys, right? This is really useful for giving the end of your notes some personality. So there are two trigger keys down here on C#2 and C2, and they will trigger a fall sample of either a short fall or a long fall for any notes that are currently held out. So if I play a sustained chord, so So I was holding down that chord, and then I play this C2. You'll hear that fall happen. Okay, and if I play C sharp, it's a shorter fall. This will work with legato too, but it'll only be, monophonic. And it also works with the glides. These are, what I call a momentary key switch. It does something, but it doesn't change the current selected articulation. Okay, now let's talk about the shorts. I've got the Zooh patch pulled up, and let me just show you everything you need to know about these. We've got a number of articulations here. The mediums are sort of medium length notes, but they're not looped, and they don't offer a legato function, so they sound like this. Zooh, Zooh. Then we have short. That's like a short note with a full attack. Zooh, 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 Zooh. And then we have our short repetitions. Now, the repetition samples will only be played under certain conditions. And if I play what I just played a moment ago with those spaces between each note, it'll sound the same. Zooh, 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 Zooh. We're on the short repetitions patch, but we're actually just hearing the regular shorts right now. I have to play a musical phrase that will cause the short repetition sample to be played by the script, such as going. Those subsequent notes after the initial note are happening so soon that the first note wouldn't have really ended. The repetitions are sort of cutting off the prior note and reattacking with a new, more sort of mushy version of the Zooh. If you imagine yourself saying Zooh, 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 it's not the same as the first one each time. So that's what's happening. And the script is going to do its best to analyze your playing and determine whether a repetition sample is sort of within that window of cutting off a prior note. You can't access these as their own articulation. It's only within that context. And you may not want that. Sometimes I actually still just use the shorts to kind of to do that same thing. Zoom, 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 zoom. And it's not that bad. It's really when you're going fast that you want to go to this articulation. Okay. Now, just a quick note, you can go to the repetition from the mediums too. So I'm going to set the articulation to medium, play a medium note, then switch to the repetition mode, and you'll see, or you won't see, you'll hear that the repetition samples will be played next. So if I go like this. Zoo, 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 zoo. Okay, we got a repetition sample there. Otherwise, it would have sounded like this. Zoo, zoo. Instead of zoo, zoo. It's a subtle difference, but you can hear that transition is different. Now, with the Zoohs in particular, there's sort of a portion to this sound that I at least think of it as sort of happening before the beat. It's like Zoo. The Z part is like before the downbeat if you were trying to put it on the downbeat. I find that if you want to quantize, you're looking to have a MIDI track offset of about 50 to 60 milliseconds to actually have the sort of pitch of the note land on the beat and not the attack of that consonant of the Z. So that's just one tip there. Now, what was making the mediums and the shorts sound pretty good compared to the repetition samples when I was repeating notes was that I currently have mono mode turned on. So mono meaning monophonic, not as opposed to like stereo mono, but mono and poly. So at the moment, I can't play chords. I'm only ever going to get one note at a time. Zoo, 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 zoo. Okay, so that's if you're creating a melody and you want it to sound as real as possible. The singers can't, the prior note doesn't hang over under it. So it's sort of like a bit of legato-esque, let's say. Now, if you want chords, then you have to turn this off. So you turn that off, and that'll tell you polyphonic mode is selected. Zooh, zooh, zooh. And you can play chords. That will work for any of these articulations, except, of course, for the short repetitions, because it's got a reference. It's almost like a legato patch. So if I leave mono off, I can do mono shorts. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Falls. Zooh, zooh. Okay. Now you can either turn it on and off using this little radio button here, but there's also a way to do it from the keyboard using these key switches. Okay, so you can, in your sequence, you can store how you want it to be, because you might want to be going back and forth between mono and poly. Now, let me just tell you about this little thing. This is called per note round robin mode. This is something that I just kind of stumbled across, and I don't know if other developers have thought of this or not, but I noticed that there are certain coincidental cases where a library can end up sounding like it has fewer round robins than it does. And that's when you're playing a repeating figure that has a number of notes that is a factor of the number of round robins there is. So you didn't think this was going to be math class, right? But imagine you were playing, imagine you had only 2 round robins and you were playing a repeating 2-note figure that just went, I'll do shorts like. Zoom, 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 zoom. Okay, on the first note, you get round robin 1, and then on the second note, you get round robin 2. Well, then you go back to the first note and you're just a round robin 1 again, but that's what you had the first time. So your 2 round robin instrument sounds like it has no round robins because you're always getting 1. Imagine you had 4 round robins, but you did a 4-note figure. Again, it would sound like there's no round robins because you would always be going back to, you would get to the end of the round robin cycle at the end of your repeating musical phrase. Zoom, 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 zoom. Now, what you could do is just say, well, the first note is a C. I want to track the round robin position of this C differently than the other notes. And that way, your 4 round robins would happen every time that you repeated, every time you repeated that musical figure. The first time you went, you would get round robin 1. The second time you played the whole figure, you'd go to round robin 2 and round robin 3, etc., etc. So like I've said, this is a corner case. If you're doing a repeating figure and it's sounding machine gunny to you, turn this on and it may improve things for you. But otherwise, leave it off, because for most other situations, it's better to not have it on. I won't go into the math on that. I don't employ random round robins in any of my instruments because I am in my main job, a media composer, and to me, having a sample accurate, completely consistent playback every time for my clients is so important. So random round robins, it just doesn't work. It's got to be the same every single time. If you need to mix it up, just hit the round robin reset key whenever you want to change it. Okay, enough round robining. Let's move on to the next topic. Okay, so now let's talk about this very fun patch, the ch and the cha patch. The 2 syllables are spread on the keyboard. The cha is at the bottom and the ch is in the upper part here. We have different lengths. Cha, cha. So those are long. Then we have medium, short. Cha, cha. And then we have short repetitions. Cha, cha. So this is kind of the same type of sample as the short repetitions, for the syllables, but I didn't do a script for it because it just felt like it didn't really need it, and now you have control to access those as their own set of samples if you want. I tend to play the regular short as sort of the on the beat kind of one, and then the ands and or if it's 16ths, the E end will be the repetition sample. So it'll be like, you know what I mean? And then it's the same for the really long. There's one Esquivel record where he does this, so that's why I did it. So all right. And one thing to know is that this also has mono mode, similar to the syllable shorts. So it's keeping it monophonic. So like that, if you play along, it gets cut off if you play a short. So this is a little more realistic. But you can turn it off, and you have the option to do it for each syllable independently. So you could leave your chas, you know, not mono, and the other one mono. So that's that for the ch. Okay, now we have our exclamations. There's not too much to this. We don't have any additional controls for this patch. It's just a sort of a menu of different effects.
Wow! 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 Woo! Ah! 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 Wow! 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 Wow!
So these, I mean, I call them pitched. They're not really pitched like a tone, but they're, you know, some are lower and some are higher. So they are somewhat pitched. Then we have these glides.
Ah! Wow! Ah! Ah!
Okay, and now the spoken. These are just little kitschy words and phrases you could throw in here and there.
Cha, 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 bossa nova, mambo, samba. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off.
Okay. Okay, so that's basically it. If you have any questions about the library before or after you purchase it, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I love getting emails. The best way is through the contact form on the website, or you could put a comment below on this YouTube video, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I really appreciate you watching the video and checking out this library. I hope you found it interesting, and we have a lot of other great things in the works. So subscribe to the channel, and you'll be notified whenever some new exciting sounds come out. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Talk to you next time.